Hi there, welcome back to the OMB Law Board. I'm Simon Bennett, and today, as part of the property series, I've got Property Lawyer Erlinda Nunn with me. Welcome, Erlinda.
Thanks for having me.
Erlinda, I wanted to talk to you about auctions and property. So I'm going to an auction. What do I do?
Well, auctions can be brutal. So before you head along, you want to do your market research, find out how much the property value is, work out how much you can spend at an auction. You want to talk to a financier if you need to obtain finance for the loan. And if there are any open homes or inspections in the lead up to the auction, it's a great idea to head along, work out where the property is, look at its features, get familiar with it so that on the day you're ready to go.
Yeah, wow, there's a lot to unpack in that one. Doing your research, getting along and having a look at other properties, what does that tell me?
So it'll give us a better insight into the market at the moment. It would also be a good idea if you could find a few comparables in the neighbourhood. So that sort of gives you an idea of what the reserve price might be on the day and where you should start your bids.
Yeah, that's really important because it's always hard to work out what the value of that property is. I get to the auction and there should be a contract on display.
Correct.
Tell me about that process.
So on the day, bidders will need to register at the auction first and foremost. The auctioneer will provide the auctioneer's terms to the bidders, and they'll also provide a contract as well. It will usually be on the standard REIQ contract, and it's important to note that a lot of these contracts are unconditional.
What does that mean, unconditional? I've heard the term.
It means no cooling off, no finance, no building a pest, no special conditions. You're locked in.
So I sign it, I'm buying it.
You're buying it.
Okay. So would it be prudent then for a buyer to get the contract checked before the auction day?
100%.
Okay. And how can you help with that process?
So we review the standard contract. Sometimes there may be additional terms. I know that I said there wouldn't be any special conditions, but sometimes sellers will delete things like the standard warranties, which would ordinarily provide a buyer a right of termination under the contract. But as we said, it's of an unconditional nature, so the seller would want to limit those rights where possible.
Okay, so before you go to an auction, get a copy of the contract from the listing agent and send it through to the OMB property team to check and give you advice on?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. And at the auction itself, obviously there's a lot of tension. There's a bit of nervousness for first-time participants. If I win the bidding, if I've got my paddle and I stick it up in the air, and they knock the property down to me, what's the effect now?
As soon as the auctioneer's hammer goes down, you're it. You've won. The property's yours.
Okay, so at that point, I've bought it. Once the property's on the market and
Yes.
they've knocked it down to me, I've bought it under those contract terms.
Correct. And you must sign on the day.
Okay. Now, there's no cooling off period. Explain that to me.
So in Queensland, we have a statutory 5-day cooling off period, which begins on the first business day. The parties receive the fully signed contract and it ends at 5 p.m. on the 5th business day. So if for any reason a buyer changes their mind during that cooling off period, they can elect to terminate the contract. But the seller can apply a termination penalty, which is 0.25% of a purchase price.
Okay, but on auction, no cooling off period, I do not get the benefit of that.
You do not get the benefit of that. And another thing to note is that when you sign the contract, there will usually be a deposit payable on the day that you sign. So when you're heading along to these auctions, it's important to have those other financial ducks in a row because generally they'll ask for 5 or 10% under the contract.
Okay, super interesting stuff, Erlinda. Be prepared, do your research, get the contract checked before you go along. Be ready with your finance, be ready with the deposit, because if they knock that auction property down to you, you've bought it.
That's correct.
Well, fantastic. Thanks for being with us today, Erlinda. That was super helpful, and hopefully our viewers and our listeners found it as interesting as I did.
Thanks, Simon.
And if you've got a property law issue or you're going to an auction, feel free to contact the OMB Property Law team to check your contract before you do.